Hi everyone, my name is Steve Stewart. I am the CEO of Orefinders Resources. Of course, we are traded on the Venture Exchange under the symbol ORX. It's time for an update. Lots has happened over the last few months with Orefinders. There's been a pretty significant corporate maneuvering. Of course, I'm referring to Mistango River Resources. I'm going to get to the details on that, how that all played out, what that means for Orefinders shareholders. I'm also going to touch upon our Knight project. There are two significant milestones, the 43-101 update, along with some what we think are new discoveries on the breccia pipes, the Minto-type, which has some pretty eye-popping holes. We're going to talk about that as well. We've also done some work on McGarry, but I'm not going to focus on that because the results are still pending. But let's get started. Forward-looking statement, we all know what that means. So this is the agenda. So I'm going to talk briefly about Mistango, what happened, what that means. I'm going to get into the Knight, and I'm going to talk just generally about Orefinders and the state of the junior market, but I'm going to keep that very brief. So this is our portfolio, if you will. Aside from these physical assets, of course, we've got positions in Pacific Precious, which is a private company we own 30% of. We're going to spin that off in probably Q1. We also own 14% in Power Ore, which is a separate publicly traded company. It's got a beautiful copper asset in Chibougamau, but these are our gold projects. They're all in Ontario. They're all very proximate to each other. We have, in effect, what we call as two different nodes. One is the Kirkland Lake Cadillac Break node, basically right in Kirkland Lake proper. Just east of that, we have the Morado, we have the McGarry, and we have exposure to the Omega, as Orefinders now owns 22% of Mistango River Resources. So that is certainly part of the portfolio. And then just to the west, we have the Knight project, which is a consolidation in and of itself. It's about 70 kilometers away from the Kirkland Lake node, but it's equally interesting. Some could argue more interesting, and of course that's the project that sits on top of the Juby, which is a 4 million ounce deposit. We see that potential as being similar to Cote Lake, in fact even having potentially greater potential than Cote Lake because it has some extremely high grade gold in the area. So let's drill down to the details of the Omega and the Mistango River Resources. This is ultimately why Orefinders itself took interest in Mistango River Resources. Back in May, we acquired from Osisko Gold Royalties, who are now one of our largest shareholders. We acquired a 31% interest in Mistango. Long story short, what occurred is we took over management of Mistango River Resources. That occurred last week, late October. It's now fully in effect. So the Orefinders slate of directors now control Mistango River Resources. Mistango is still an independent company. There's lots of speculation on what we will do, but for now, and for all intents and purposes, we have no intention of doing anything other than writing Mistango corporately, understanding the geology and moving it forward. Is it strategic to Orefinders? Of course it is. Is it strategic to Gatling? Absolutely. The same will be said for Agnico Eagle, Kirkland Lake Gold, and anybody else in the area. In fact, they're all strategic to each other. It's no secret that I believe that consolidation is coming, particularly on the Cadillac. It just makes sense, but how you do it, when you do it, that's the ultimate question, and I'm not going to speculate on that at this point in time. But why did Orefinders take an interest in Mistango? Well, it's very simple. We see 585,000 ounces on the Cadillac Larder Lake Break. The Cadillac Break is, of course, world-class. There's no other way to describe it in a world-class jurisdiction. To have a resource of that magnitude, nearly 600,000 ounces near surface at the grades we see. There are very few deposits quite like that in jurisdictions like that. So it's substantial. Is it something that we're going to put in production tomorrow? No, we need to grow it, but you need to start somewhere, and that's a great start. There's tremendous potential on the Omega outside of what is call it indicated or inferred in this resource, but it needs exploration. There's all sorts of interesting opportunities on this project that we will be exploring, which I do not think were explored in the past. So we'll get into that later, but long story short, this is why it's a substantial resource. You'll see in the map why it is strategic, and it's got great grades and great size. A comparable, as I said before, I think the price we paid and the value received were totally not equal. Here's a good comparable. Mistango River Resources, it has about 585,000 ounces, good grade. It's in a single resource, so it's not 3 or 4 different resources. It's all together. We believe it is open pittable, although it needs substantial work in order to define the engineering, which has not been done. And it's got a market cap of $2 million. In fact, Orefinders paid $250,000 for its 31% interest back in May. I think that is good value. It's a low price and there's lots of value, and the value I defined as having the gold resource, and we can use that comparable relative to Gatling. It's just one of many examples, but I choose Gatling because they are literally our neighbor. Their property straddles Mistango River Resources. They've got round figures, 1 million ounces. They're trading at 22, and their resource isn't as cohesive as that of Omega. It's quite deep. It's spread across 3 different resources: the Chemainus, Bear Lake, and the Ferndale. And so it's different. It's not necessarily better or worse, but it's different. We think the Omega probably stands up as good or better, yet it is valued at less than 10%. And so that's what I mean about price we paid. We paid $250,000 in shares to receive the position, and the position has resulted in ultimate control of the company. And Gatling Resources has a similar resource, has a little bit different characteristics, and is worth significantly more. So I think the investment from Orefinders' perspective has panned out. Well, it will pan out. We see the value. It hasn't been realized yet, but the market is just not reflecting any value right now. So this is a drill down to the details. This is our Kirkland Lake node. We've got our flagship, original flagship, the Morado property. It's 442,000 ounces at one point, just rounding up 1.3 grams per ton in a pit. You can see the little pit there. We've done a PEA on a starter pit there. We've done a bulk sample on that. The McGarry project, we acquired that as well. It's got a high grade resource, which is very comparable to that of Gatling in terms of depth and grades. In fact, it's got the best grades, and it's right beside the Curatis, and we found some interesting stuff up there on the summer exploration program, which will have news out there. And of course, the McGarry has the best infrastructure in town. With it was mined underground 2013. It's got a head frame, hoist, shaft, etc. It actually has a drift that goes over to Gatling Exploration's property. So it's very strategic. And then, of course, we've got the Omega. Of course, the Omega is owned 100% by Mistango River Resources, and Orefinders is a significant shareholder. And we've got, what else do we have? We have Agnico Eagle and the Upper Beaver. That is obviously a major player in the area. The Upper Beaver is a former Queenston asset, and it is my belief that it is going to be Agnico Eagle's next mine. They're paying very close attention to it. It's a fantastic asset, and I think all of these projects in the region become very relevant to what's going on. Okay, so moving forward, I've discussed the Kirkland Lake and Mistango, and then now I'm going to move to our Shining Tree, or our West Kirkland node. This is the Knight project. There's a couple interesting things happening here, and I'll talk about them now. But I just want to lay the groundwork for those who aren't familiar with it. We've got eye-popping intersections there. We've got 3 different styles of mineralization. The Minto is a high-grade breccia pipe, so it's like a carrot in the ground. It's been drilled from surface down to 1 kilometer at depth. It still ends in mineralization. We've got the Tiranite, which is directly across the street. It's got mining infrastructure. It's got a shaft, head frame, hoist. It's got a ramp down to mineralization, and it's got fantastic grades. 10 grams over 14 meters. It is a quartz hosted type mineralization. So it is, call it traditional Abitibi style of mineralization. Then we've got the Porphyry Lake, which has porphyry style mineralization. We think it's comparable to that of what's going on in the Juby, which of course is owned by Pan American Silver, and that's 4 million ounces. directly to our south. We do view these two projects as eventually being one and the same in order for it to be a commercially viable operation. There's still lots of work to be done, but I think consolidation is certainly part of that. So that's the groundwork of it. Now, what are we doing on these projects? Well, we've had press releases fairly recently. We've got 31,000 meters of drill core, which represents $5 million worth of drilling on our night project. Of course, this is our night project. 31,000 meters. We have resampled that, and we're going to be coming out with a maiden 43-101 resource estimate on that property. That's coming soon. The work has been done in terms of the physical work, or on the on-site work, I should say, as well as the sampling and the QA/QC. All that is done. Now it's compilation, independent QP, and then the publication of the report. So stay tuned for that. I think the second item, which has occurred on night, which we just had a news release out last week, I don't think it's been really fully appreciated. If I go back to September 3rd, I will say that we came out with what I always call a pretty picture, just like this. We reprocessed some very high quality magnetic geophysics, and we looked at it in a different way, and we found the signature of the Minto breccia pipe. And the Minto breccia pipe is the resource that has these 18 grams over 65 meters, 13 grams over 82 meters, and a whole lot more. Those are just the two sort of most outstanding intersections. But this is what we found, and we had never seen its signature in the geophysics before. So this is the surface expression here, this sort of donut type shape, the Minto pipe. It's about 30 to 40 meters in diameter at surface, and it dips almost vertically down, but we can sort of see this diabase here. But nonetheless, the important part is we saw its magnetic signature. And what we did then is we went back and we stepped out and we looked at, well, what else has similar features to that of Minto? So once you find the keystone, you can look for other clues, and that's what we did. We found well over 2 dozen of these circular magnetic geophysical features similar to Minto. We then layered on top of, we did some geochem, and we looked for gold and arsenic, and because the gold is associated with arsenic. So we looked at the geochem, and then once we had these anomalies, we actually went to the ground to see if these things outcrop. So we looked for call it the geophysical donuts. We went to where their location is, and we looked for rocks, and we found a whole bunch of rocks. And just on November 1st, just a few days ago, we came out with the results of these grab samples and chip samples, etc. And we've announced that there is 11 of these circular anomalies carry mineralization, which carries gold and arsenic, which would be similar to that of the Minto. So what does that mean? What are we doing? Well, ultimately, we're looking for another Minto-type pipe. We believe that the Minto on its own does not have enough ounces per vertical meters to be interesting because it's only 30 meters wide. But if we found other pipes similar would have grades like that, that changes the dynamics quite substantially. And I should also note that these breccia pipes, they're quite well known in the world of geology, and when they do occur, they tend to happen in clusters. There's many examples of that, and so we believe there's only been one found, but we believe there's others. It's just a question of finding them and poking some drill holes. So we are on the treasure hunt, if you will, and so the fact that it outcropped was great because that allows us to triage and prioritize the targets. So what's next? So now that we have, again, triage this next set of geophysical anomalies with grab samples that have the same type of mineralization of Minto, we will look to do some IP, which is some more ground geophysics, where we will literally cut a line and run a single line right up the circular magnetic feature, and we will turn the electricity on, and if it lights up, that's a great sign. And then once that occurs, we know we have a high priority drill target, and we will in short order poke a hole in that and see if it is like the Minto. And we have at least 11 targets to do it on. So I think this is really fundamental. When the Minto target itself was discovered a number of years ago and drilled those eye-popping holes, the stock ran through the roof. And if we found another one, I'm not going to speculate on what could happen, but it would be certainly an important milestone for the Knight project and for Orefinders. So that is our update. That's the gist of what occurred on our September 3rd and our November 1st news releases. We will be working towards poking some holes ultimately in those targets. Just a little bit about the 43101. These are just a snippet of grades, so you can see here. I mean, I've already quoted these Minto grades, but look, the Tiranite mine, which is the quartz hosted, it's got some fantastic grades right here. It's got some fantastic grades, and as does the Dugan, which has the more porphyry style mineralization. These are at surface, I mean, 50 meters at 2 grams, 32 meters at 2 grams on the Dugan, which is another zone proximate to the Tiranite and the Minto. I mean, it's got different styles. These 3 different zones represent 3 different styles of mineralization, all in the Knight project. And of course, it sits on top of the Juby, which is 4 million ounces. So this is a very interesting project to us. So catalysts, I've talked about a number of them, but I'll just run through them. So we expect to have some news on the high grade Minto-type. Actually, we did have the news, so my apologies. It came out on November 1st. We'll have an update on the resampling of the historical core, obviously the maiden resource. We're going to have some news shortly out on the McGarry project. We were up there in the summer, did some work there, so we'll have some results. Pacific Precious, we're going to have an update on its results. Its 43101 is complete, so we'll have a full update, including some great results we had out of there, and obviously it's going public process. We, in effect, will be spinning it off just like we did, very similar to that of Power Ore, which we did last year, so shareholders can expect to receive shares in a dividend of shares in Pacific Precious. So that is underway. A lot of work's been going on behind the scenes there, and we'll be moving that forward as quickly as possible. And that's effectively it. So it was just a quick update. I encourage any Orefinders shareholders to reach out and contact me. Again, my name is Stephen Stewart. I'm the CEO of Orefinders Resources. We trade on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol ORX. Check us out. Give me a call. Thank you for your time.